Thanks, Chair. I think the fact that we have two Irish gentlemen here today giving their contributions shows how much of a crisis we actually have in housing in Ireland. And I just want to thank John Coleman and Michael O'Flynn both for your contributions today. The question I have is for you, Michael. John mentioned earlier on that a number of years ago our private investment funding for apartment building literally fell through the floor, and we don't have any now. The only people that can afford to build apartments are the state. And you've talked about, amongst other issues, the lack of private and public investment. Can I ask you specifically what you would like to see from both the Irish government and the EU institutions to improve private financial investment or access to funds for Irish builders? And second of all, what would your views with regard to a state government financed guarantee loan scheme? Would that help, free up funds as opposed to the very high interest rates that you're currently paying across the way? And secondly, I have a question for Mark from the EIB. Can I just ask, if we did introduce a state government-backed scheme in Ireland, would it conform to state aid rules or would it be in conflict with them? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Mr. O'Flynn for the answer and then to Mr. Doherty.
Thank you, Regina, and it's a pleasure to be here. So there are two types of development that needs funding. One is, and John Coleman alluded to it earlier as well, is the PRS, the private sector funding, that is crucial to apartment development and to people who want to rent properties. I know that there's a great European culture of rent, but there's a great Irish culture of ownership. And we had a lot of good debate in the Irish Housing Commission in relation to this issue in particular. As already alluded to by a number of my colleagues here on my left, apartment development is quite problematic. It's quite expensive, and the costs aren't going to change anytime soon. And I know I've heard other comments here that almost, materials can come down in price. I have not seen it. I don't understand what people are talking about when they make statements like that. So to answer your question, we have to look at what are the fundamentals of financing apartments. And one of the big problems we have in Ireland because of the rent pressure zones and because of the situation where we haven't the right climate for long-term private monies to invest. I think it should co-invest with the state. I think the state has a duty to its people to provide reasonable housing, rental apartments, I should say, around housing at a cost that they can afford. But I think you have to balance that with the crucial workers and all of that goes with it. And maybe that involves some subsidies. But the only solution to supply or to rental properties is supply. And the only solution to that is having private sector investment. And you're not going to do that if you're going to put draconian measures on them and they can't see a return on their actual investment. So it's a bit of a long answer to a complex question. In relation to financing generally, I think the state could do more than they are doing because the banks have been through a very difficult decade or more and very clear obligations are now on them. But we have to get money at a reasonable cost if we are to produce product at a reasonable cost. There is nothing wrong with the word profit. If we don't have profit, we don't have development. If you don't have development, you haven't got any situation for your people. So the point I'm making is there has to be more collaboration with the public and private. People keep talking about, the private must do more. The private will do more if the right circumstances are created in conjunction with government and in conjunction with the public sector. I can tell you, I speak here as a private in the business 47 years, and I speak for all colleagues who are prepared to shoulder to the wheel. There is too much talk about the private sector are in it only to make one thing, profit. Of course they must make profit, but they must also look at the future of their own business models. That is really, really important. You did ask a second question, a state-backed, what was that, Regina?
If the state was to back the loans, so the difference of the funding that you can get.
I don't like the state having to underwrite loans. I think that's going further than is necessary. I think collaboration and proper partnership, proper governance, but not And I stress, not public control, because that frightens people away. You can have exit mechanisms or other ways of having a collaboration if it doesn't go exactly to plan. But don't frighten the people we need the money from. We have done that already in Ireland, and unfortunately, because we changed the rules so much, people say, oh, we're not doing that anymore. We need these people. We all need to work together, Regina.